Hey everyone, welcome back to another Tic Tac Taiko. This is part 2 of a two-part series on Taiko competition. In part 1, I talked about the survey I gave out to the Taiko community. The questions, the answers, the demographics, the data. I kept it very objective. But this week's going to be a little different. I'm going to talk about two different sentiments that are very common to hear in North American Taiko. These comments or arguments are as follows. Number 1, Taiko competition is bad in North America because it goes against the spirit of how the community was started. And number 2, competition would be harmful to the North American Taiko community. Before I get into the substance of this week's video, I want to make something really clear. I'm not here to attack anyone for their beliefs or opinions on competition in Taiko. Instead, I'm going to use my debate skills to dissect and break down both of those arguments. I may not change anyone's mind, but I'm hoping that people start questioning why they may have those beliefs or understand better why others have them. If you're new to Taiko, or you're not used to North American Taiko, or you haven't played Taiko before, whatever the reason, you may not know that these arguments exist or why these opinions are here. So I want to talk about how the North American Taiko community was formed without going into a super in-depth history, because that's not what this video is about. But it's important to understand where things came from. The first 3 groups to form in North America, 1968, 1969, and 1973. After that, other groups started popping up, mostly on the West and East Coast. If you wanted to share knowledge, to learn from someone, to understand how to maintain or build equipment, you couldn't email, instant message, or text someone. There was no internet. Those things didn't exist back then. And for a lot of you, this is probably unfathomable, but that's the way it was. So the idea of cooperation, working together, was essential. If you wanted to learn how to play Taiko, you couldn't look online. There was no online. There was no YouTube or TikTok. There was no Vimeo. There was no alternatives. You had to go find an instructor in person. Maybe that person was an hour away. Maybe that person was several states away. Maybe you had an instructor from Japan that came out and started to seed a group, and then you were on your own. It was really hard, and people had to work together to make it happen. If you needed equipment or to repair equipment, the same thing applied, but there were even less groups that could help because everyone was kind of learning on their own. There weren't a lot of drum manufacturers, and they definitely weren't available in the US for quite a while. We fast forward to now, 2023, 55 years from that first group, and a lot has changed. The big 2 things that have changed: 1, the amount of Taiko and Taiko groups in North America, and 2, the technology available. You can reach out to pretty much anyone in the Taiko world if they have an online presence, even if it's just to say, hi. You can learn from almost anyone in the world, even on the other side of the globe, in real time on online video, or pre-recorded video that you can access anytime you want from services like Kadon. There are resources such as this channel, or other people that post videos and have an online presence to give advice, tips on technique, historical context information. And let's say you want to repair or even build a drum, that's available online as well. And this is just the technology that's available. There are hundreds of groups in North America. The last that I checked, 4 or 5 years ago, there were over 500 groups. I wouldn't be surprised if there were near 600 or more now. And you factor in that each group has many members, many different classes. Who knows how many Taiko players are out there, but that's way more people than there were 55 years ago. And let's not forget the conferences and gatherings that happen every now and then that definitely weren't around when Taiko first started. The first North American Taiko Conference happened in 1997, a good 30 years after the first Taiko group formed in North America. And the culture and purpose of Taiko has changed a lot between groups as well. Back in the day, people were just playing Taiko to play Taiko, and some may have had aspirations, but now you have groups that are focused on particular demographics, very particular about what they play or who they let in the group. You have groups that are professional or semi-professional who tour around the country, some even around the world. When you look at Taiko from where it was to where it is now, it's really, really important to understand how much has changed in those 55 years. All right, with that context in mind, let's get to the first argument, which says, Taiko competition goes against the spirit of how the North American Taiko community was formed. I have a lot of issues with this argument. It boils down to saying, this is the way we've always done things, and this is the way we want to keep doing things. Now, anyone who knows me knows that when I hear that argument in any context, at work, taking classes, my friends, family, I am compelled to poke holes in it until there's really not much left. And it doesn't always endear me, it doesn't always help me make friends. Apologies to those who I've done that to, but it's not a very strong argument. If you have a physical process or a business model that you say, here's the old way, the way we've always done, and we've got a new way, a new idea, let's test them out. Then you can figure out which one is better, which one is worse, or if they're the same, that's fine. At least you know. But having this model, this value system of cooperation, not competition, doesn't mean it's bad, but we have no way of knowing that it's the best way, that it might actually be holding people back because we've never tested anything else, because so many people are against trying it. I mean, put yourself in a situation where you go to a friend, a coworker, family member, spouse, whatever, and you say, I've got this great idea, I think this might be really interesting, and they said, yeah, but we've always done it this way, so no. How would that make you feel? Maybe frustrated? Maybe unheard? Maybe disrespected? Who knows? But that's essentially what it's like when the people who want things to stay the way it is tell people that are interested in other ideas, yeah, no, we've always done it this way. Going back to this idea that you have the old way and you introduce new ideas that somewhat conflict or maybe go against the old way, think about what really happens in most people's lives. It's not, oh, new way wins, old way is gone, that's it. Or old way wins, new way is gone. No, generally you take what's best of both ideas and you create a new system or process. Because it's not like only cooperation can be our value system or only competition can be the value system. That's not realistic. No, people can both challenge each other and support each other. I see it all the time in the arts that I'm interested in, and I'll bet you see it all the time as well. We absolutely can have a community that does both. And finally, the North American Taiko community and other communities is evolving. Maybe it's evolving too fast for your liking or too slow, but it's evolving. The people are changing, the culture is changing, the technologies are changing. There are so many more groups than there were, and that continues to grow. And there are so many more people playing Taiko, and each one of them has their own reasons why they play and what's important to them. So yes, it's important to understand what the values were of those first groups for the first, 5, 10, 20 years. It's important to understand how they survived and what that value system was. If someone wants to adhere to the value system that happened, let's say 50 years ago, that's great. I don't think anyone minds. But for those who want to explore here or try here or experiment here, no one has the right to tell them you can't do that. You can personally feel that, and maybe even in a conversation you can say, hey, I don't agree with this, but to actively pull them back, restrain them, and prohibit it from happening, how is that cooperation? How is that community? It's not. So that's one argument down. Let's take a look at the second one. Competition would be harmful to the North American Taiko community. Now there's a lot to unpack here, so I'm going to focus on three main areas: competition, harm, and Taiko community. Let's start in order with competition. Let's take a look at this idea of competition. I'm not going to break open the dictionary and read you the definition. It's not really worth it. But competition is something that exists in all of our lives. It's a contest or a challenge, usually between one or more people. You can challenge yourself to do more push-ups next time, or eat more jelly beans than last week. I mean, whatever. You do you. In my Taiko survey, I asked people, have you ever competed in a non-Taiko competition? And I want to say about 30, maybe 40% of people said no. But you know what? They were wrong. Because I guarantee you, if you were able, as a little kid, however tall little kids are, you ran from point A to point B and tried to beat another little kid. Or there was a tree on the other side of the yard that you were trying to beat your friend or teacher or parent at. We did that as kids all the time. I bet I can throw this rock further than you. I bet I can eat more of those than you can. Whatever, stupid little contests and competitions. That's what we did as kids. And a lot of us do those as adults, including the stupid competitions. If you watch sports, you like competition. Have you ever played chess, checkers, tic-tac-toe? Ever done up high, down low, you're too slow? These are all competitions. We tend not to think of them as such, but they are. And what's more, it's not just that some art forms have competition. In fact, some art forms use competition to bring up the art form, to develop it, to challenge each other, like hip-hop dance, rap battles. You see a lot of competition because it's a valued part of the art. And again, no one is forced to compete, but it is something that's readily available and is commonplace and associated with that art. While we're still on competition, before we move on, I wanted to address the 5 statements or arguments that I got when I did my Taiko competition survey. In the first video in the series, I said I would address them in this video, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at each one of those statements, and I'm going to give a counter argument as to why I think the logic is not sound. But again, I'm here looking at the arguments objectively. I'm not here to attack the person or persons having them. I simply want to show why I feel like the logic to these arguments is not sound. Number 1, I do not believe in competition about artistic expression. Taiko isn't a sport. Well, I mean, I don't consider cooking a sport, but there are a lot of cooking competitions out there. I wouldn't consider comedy a sport, but there are many comedy competitions out there. In fact, almost every single art form out there has some kind of competition to it. It's not to say that they all will, but it's easy to see why people that do Taiko might want to compete in Taiko. Number 2. I consider competition an important way to push sportive activities, but a toxic way to showcase artistic expression. So who's to tell anyone how they are allowed to express themselves? This is one of the dangers of this idea that we don't do competition. Competition is bad. I mean, if somebody in my community wants to compete, I don't have to support them per se, but I shouldn't be saying, no, you can't express yourself that way. Imagine what that would have been like 50 years ago with someone going, yeah, you know, we don't want you expressing yourself this way. We're only going to express ourselves a certain way. I mean, when should that be allowed? In my opinion, never. And looking at communities that have competition, not everyone competes in those art forms, but they benefit from the art form growing because of those competitions. Everybody benefits whether or not they compete. Number 3, I think that Taiko competitions are against the spirit of Taiko. Competing against others rather than playing with them could be very destructive. Just to be really clear here, in Japan, where both the art form and the instrument of Taiko originated from, they do a lot of Taiko competition. It's very common. So how does Taiko competition go against the spirit of Taiko? I mean, even in South America, there's a lot of competition in Taiko, and both Japan and South America seem to be doing really well with their Taiko communities. Number 4, I like Taiko that is supportive and inclusive. Competitions are not something I would be interested in as a result. Again, if you're not interested in competition, I 100% support it, and I think anyone who is into competition would also 100% support an opinion like that. But if you're talking supporting and inclusivity, I urge you to watch the 2023 Odaiko Taikai live stream, because that was a showcase of supporting inclusive community. You had the people that sent in audition tapes, you had the actual participants, the finalists, you had the judges, you had the vendors, you had the volunteers, you had the donors, the friends and family, people going out and supporting them live, you had the organizers. that was community supporting each other and an inclusive support as well. So if you have concerns that competition would not be like that, this flies in the face of that logic. And number 5, art, especially folk art by volunteers, is about cooperation, not competition. I feel like you're coming into my community theater and asking if we want to hold our own Oscars. I will admit, this argument bothered me for several reasons, and it took me a while to figure out exactly why. First, it's really important to understand the history of taiko before saying this is a folk art. Daihachi Oguchi is considered the father, grandfather, creator, founder, whatever, of kumidaiko, Japanese ensemble taiko drumming. He was a Japanese man who played trap drums, jazz drummer, and created the idea of bringing multiple taiko together. And this happened about 60 years ago. So considering kumidaiko as a folk art, that's not really true. If anything, it's contemporary art, it's fine art, it's modern. So that's the first problem I have with this statement. Kumidaiko is not folk art. That's not to say that no taiko is folk art. No, there's definitely taiko that I would consider folk art, and there's probably some group or ensemble drumming that could be considered folk art, but the overwhelming majority of ensemble taiko drumming is not folk art. And the second thing, maybe even more important, is to understand that there is no outside organization coming in and demanding one member of each group as tribute to go do the competition that no one wants to do. This isn't the Hunger Games. But the real danger in this argument, and the thing that made me feel really uncomfortable, was sort of the othering of people in the community. It's almost like saying, well, real community members in North America, they don't want competition, so anyone else is from the outside. No, everybody who was involved in the competition that happened just a few months ago was from the taiko community here in North America. It was not outsiders, it was not outliers. They're people that you practice with, the people that you teach, people that you take lessons from, the people that you go take workshops from, the people that you may admire who have founded groups, who have started whole movements. There are the people that you bump into at random at Taiko conference. These are people in your community that you know. They're not others. And to say, well, these other people have these opinions that we don't want, that's how you make someone an other. And that's how you start hating other people and dismissing and minimizing them. And that happens way too much in our culture today. So it's really important to understand those who want competition are just like the people that don't want competition. And it's really, really dangerous to start thinking of them as having wrong or outside opinions to the rest of us. All right, let's take a look at the second part. What would be harmful to the North American Taiko community when it comes to competition? I think this is a valid question. Maybe there are rivalries that form between individuals or groups. Maybe some people get upset at the judges and think that they're biased. Maybe there are groups or people that don't win or never win and get really upset with the community in general. Ill will. Maybe there's potential for sort of a toxic culture and where people think, I'm the best because I win competitions, sort of a negative ego. I don't know, maybe it even makes people want to stop playing taiko because they see the community sort of changing in ways they don't like. I would say fairly that any of those and more might be negative effects from having competition in North American Taiko. Sure, but I have two counter arguments to all and any of those types of harm. The first counter argument is, I think, really interesting, but I need to be very careful about how I go about saying it. In the 55 years that this community has been around, there has been rivalries where groups or individuals did not like each other, and sometimes it was very evident to the others around. Egos that have rubbed people the wrong way, pissed people off, even caused a lot of drama. Internal conflicts that were so bad that groups split, or everyone but one person left, or you have groups almost dying out because people are so upset at whatever is happening within that group. Sometimes you have new groups forming that are actively poaching members of other groups in a very unethical manner. I could go on with a few more, but the point is this: every kind of harm that people say might happen with Taiko competition has already happened in the Taiko community. And in some cases, it's still happening now. So the idea that competition would bring in some kind of new harm that we couldn't handle is nonsense. Which brings me to the second counter argument, which is very much related. This idea that competition would bring harm to the community makes it sound like the community is fragile, that we couldn't handle adversity. We survived, more or less, COVID, and we survived all of the other things that have been harmful before competition was ever a factor. And I don't want to sound flippant, but this idea that competition would hurt the community, it sounds like a lot of sky is falling, doom and gloom. We've had 2 Taiko competitions in North America already, and we're still here. We had Matsuri Crashers, which was a thing for a while. 2 people solo to a festive backing rhythm. One person solos, other person solos. Audience goes, we like this person's solo better than that person's solo. Next 2 step up. That was it. Nothing happened. And you can say, oh, that hurt the community, but how? Again, it's one thing to say, I don't like it. It's another thing to project then what you don't like on other people who don't necessarily share those feelings. Are you still with me? Great. We've got one more thing to talk about for the second argument, and that's the idea of Taiko community. Who is in the Taiko community? Give it a thought. The other day I was thinking of this myself, and it kind of blew my mind how big the Taiko community could be if you have an open mind. There's those who play Taiko now. There's those who used to play Taiko. There are those who make the drums that we use. There are those who also make the equipment, including costumes that we use. There are spouses, family members, co-workers that come see us, friends, people that support us, acquaintances. There are those who give us our practice spaces, places that we play, those who invite us to come out and perform, tour managers even. And then you have sort of where you start to stretch it, you have the food vendors and the people that benefit from us being in our venue. And of course, the audience, people that you don't know personally, who don't know you personally, but they come and they love Taiko. And there's more, I'm sure there's more that I could think of if I really wanted to spend time there, but the idea is the Taiko community is potentially enormous, mind-blowingly huge. So how does anyone speak to what is good or bad for them? And to say that a type of Taiko that you may not like is harmful to all of those people, I'm sorry, none of us can do that. Look, there is Taiko out there that I don't like. There's Taiko out there that I am not going to buy tickets to go see. I don't maybe even care much about. But the thing is, I want more of it. I want more of the Taiko I don't like. And maybe at first that sounds weird, but think about it. More Taiko is almost always better than less. I'm sure there's exceptions, but more Taiko means more potential new members playing Taiko, which means more potential new groups out there, more potential new performances, more potential audience, more attention and eyes on Taiko, more money, more grants, more revenue, more everything. More Taiko equals more Taiko. Less Taiko, well, I think you can see where that goes. No, we don't do that kind of Taiko here, and no, we don't allow that kind of Taiko here. How is that helping the community? How is that helping the art form? How is that helping the people that you play with? The last thing I want to say ties into everything, and it may come off a little harsh, and if you feel it's a little harsh, I invite you to sit with it and think, why does it feel that way? If you have power, influence, a voice in the Taiko community, and you are out there saying, yeah, we don't support this Taiko, or this type of Taiko is bad, or you are actively preventing certain types of Taiko from happening, I think you're hurting the community more than competition is. You are contributing to rifts and misunderstandings and ill will that you say competition would bring about. I'm not saying that competition is the best thing in the world. In fact, I haven't really even stated my personal opinions on competition if you think about it. I'm just asking people to think about why they think the things they do, the actions that they take, and how they impact the community that they themselves are a part of. Look, I don't think anyone watching this video dislikes or hates Taiko. The original intent of the people that played North American Taiko was to express themselves. They did it back then, and they formed a community of people that all wanted to express themselves. And nowadays, people play Taiko again to express themselves. And they're doing it in ways that might be a little scary, a little different, a little against those original values. But that doesn't mean that it's wrong. I'm not tearing down these arguments in order to make myself look smart or to make anyone feel dumb or bad. I simply want people to ask themselves the question, what role do you want to have in the growth of a Taiko community you are in? In 50, 100, 200 years, do you want to be remembered as someone that helped it soar or that helped it struggle? This was a very different video for me to put out. Definitely the most controversial one that I've done. And I expect some people to not like it, to be upset, maybe even just feeling uncomfortable. And if that's the case, I invite you to reach out and have a dialogue with me. Before I posted this video, I actually had a Taiko friend reach out and tell me why they did not like competition, to give me a little bit more context. It was a great conversation. There was dialogue, there was understanding on both sides. We both learned something, and I'm hoping that this video creates that kind of dialogue, not just between me and other people, but others in the Taiko community amongst themselves. Again, I think everyone watching wants the Taiko community to thrive, not just North American Taiko, the Taiko community, everybody involved in Taiko. But for that to happen, we need to have dialogue. We need to have understanding of where people are coming from, even the things that are maybe potentially negative or uncomfortable. Hence this video. So reach out in my comment section below, comment on the Facebook group where I'm going to post this, reach out to me via email or direct message, whatever you're comfortable with. And until next time, keep on practicing and be well.